Zoe Booth, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me back.
It was about a year ago that we did our little potty, didn't we?
Yeah, but I see you all the time, so it's like, goes very quickly.
Yes. All right, well, why don't you tell me about your, we're here today because I'm interested in your political arc.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very interesting.
Oh.
Yeah. I want to talk to you about Quillette and your role there and sort of what do you do and what is Quillette about?
So Quillette, for anyone who doesn't know, is a digital magazine. It was founded by Claire Lehman, who I know you've interviewed. She's my boss. She's also like a mentor and a mate. She's great. She founded Quillette. It started as a blog and now it's a really popular, internationally read and well-respected publication. We publish long-form essays on all the spicy topics, politics, culture. We were one of the OGs who commented on identity politics and how that was in many ways sort of ruining discourse and academia. But since then, we've branched out a little bit more. There are more publications talking about that. It's nothing new. The average person knows these terms like woke and cancel culture. And we publish on other stuff too. Like today we published a really interesting piece on recycling and how you can't actually recycle plastic. I didn't know that. But anyway. So yeah, we comment on a lot of things and I have my podcast there and yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, like I said before, I'm interested in your political arc. You spend a lot of time criticizing social justice activism.
Yes.
But you used to be yourself a social justice activist. Why don't you talk to me how you got involved with that and actually what that means to you?
Well, I would say I still am a social justice activist. I would just say I'm a different type. I'm coming at it from a different angle, and that's not an identity-based angle like, how we're all split into what color skin we have or what sex we are or our gender identity or any of that. I see people as more individuals who have common values regardless of, what group we fit into. And I advocate for truth and justice and all the other values I stand for and many others stand for, and less about, separating us and more about what common values.
Well, to be more precise then, would you say it would be accurate to call yourself, you were a left-wing social justice activist?
Yeah, I'd say quite far left. I still in many ways identify as being on the left and align with the left in more ways than with the right, actually. But it's just that the left has changed, I believe, and many people seem to agree with me. So,
okay, well, talk to me about that. So let's get into specifics. So progressive, actually, maybe that is a better word to use, because there seems to be a difference between progressive and liberal. But then some progressives are more liberal than other progressives, and then some liberals are conservative. But I always break them up as it's conservative, liberal, progressive, which might be a weird way of breaking it up. But why don't we just, let's backtrack. Go to the beginning of your activist days. How would you sort of identify yourself back then?
Well, yeah, it all started when I was 14, 15, possibly even 13, and was getting really into thinking about philosophy. I didn't know that it was called philosophy at the time, but I grew up in a pretty, well-educated family, I suppose, and we had these discussions around the dinner table, and I started looking for discourse online, and I was on Tumblr, and, Twitter wasn't really, I don't think it existed at the time, but there was a lot of discourse on Tumblr, and what teenagers, of course, being teenagers, were talking about was far left political issues like communism, Marxism, Marxist feminism, that led me into veganism, patriarchy, all of these concepts that as a 15-year-old girl, entering into womanhood and going through puberty and starting, to have sex and meet men and all these things, it's a very confusing time and a time of change and flux. And I think these sort of militant ideas provided me with answers, and I just thought that was the answer to everything.
What was so attractive about these far left ideas for you at the time initially?
Well, yeah, as I was saying, that it was a weird period, and I think a lot of teenagers, go through this time of change and transition from being a child to being an adult, and understanding the sort of dark parts of humanity in the world. And it's shocking, that men and women are treated differently, or that little girls are treated differently as they get older and become women. Why is that the case? Well, because there's a patriarchy, and that's the answer to it. It's simply that men are, power hungry people who will abuse women. Oh, okay, done. That it seemed very simple to me, and it answered my questions. It made me angry, but it just answered questions for me. But obviously, these ideas don't answer all your questions. As you get older, you should realize that, although a lot of people don't, and they still stay in these black and white, mindsets.
What talk to me more about what it was like being entrenched in the ideology. Like what was some of the experiences you had in those spaces?
Yeah, so I should say that I wasn't just 15 when I was going through all this. Like, it started at 15, but it lasted probably up until I was about 24 or 25. And what was it like? Well, I spent a lot of that time being pretty angry at the world. Like, I've always loved life, and I still loved life during that time, but it was a time when I celebrated being angry and encouraged other people to be angry and to fight with people and to tell other people that they were wrong. And if you're hearing something and it's obviously wrong, then you should confront that person in a way that's, actually shame them. So I remember at university and in classes, I would feel a duty and enjoy shaming people who said something that was a bit politically incorrect, or by my very sensitive standards was incorrect, or my dad or my aunt, people like that.
I mean, that makes me feel like it does feel good to be right. Mm-hmm. Like, I still feel that today. Maybe I'm a bit more aware of it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what led you to sort of become disillusioned with these ideas in this movement?
So I was, part of these groups, and I started seeing, especially online, that a lot of the discourse, you really had to toe a line, which I was used to, and I supported towing lines and not, diverging from the orthodoxy of the ideology, whatever, or questioning it. But at times it did seem a little bit oppressive, like, for example, in these feminist groups I was part of, we started to put, there was an expectation that we'd have to put trigger warnings simply for talking about food. So you couldn't talk about eating a sandwich without saying, trigger warning, food. Hey girls, I had a great sandwich today. And I started, because some of these girls might have had eating disorders or something like that, and you could trigger them and they could relapse and blah, blah, blah. And I started to think, isn't this a little bit excessive? Like, it's very unfortunate that this girl might have an eating disorder and, but is it really my responsibility to protect her so much from this trauma, reliving this trauma, that I have to change my speech? Seemed a bit excessive. And then other cracks started to form, and I realized that it wasn't just this one issue, but it was many other issues, things that I couldn't talk about that I actually wanted to talk about.
Yeah, it sounds like you are, it sounds like that sounds what you're saying a pretty extreme example, but I'm aware we use extreme examples to paint an entire movement. Do you think you're doing that now, or was there so many examples that you feel like the whole movement was just becoming this coddling, sort of oversensitive victimhood? Yeah,
like that was an extreme example, but a pretty basic example that is still an orthodoxy in feminism is that, an example is that this girls group, this feminist group, wanted to like change into another feminist group, and in order to be passed over to that group, we had to commit we had to fill out a quiz. And the quiz had all these questions like, do you support abortion? Do you support, pronouns, all this stuff. And especially with the abortion one, I started thinking like, yeah, of course I'm pro-choice, but like, is there no room for discussion? Like, what about, I love philosophy and I love ethics. And I thought, like, what about if it's the day before a woman's supposed to give birth and she's just like, nah, it doesn't happen, but it's an interesting thought experiment, an ethical dilemma to question. And can that not be questioned? So I felt really uncomfortable saying, yes, I'm pro-abortion or no, I'm anti-abortion when there was like so much interesting and rich discussion to happen, in between that, in that gray area. And these girls, it wasn't just the quiz, it was the whole ethos of these groups that no, there is white, there is black, there is yes, there is no, and there is no in between. And you're either with us or against us. And I didn't like that. I don't like being in groups. I'm an only child. I don't like it.
Yeah, right. So you must have felt pretty politically homeless, I guess, after that.
That's when it started, the political homelessness. Yeah. And then I was like in the closet, I would say, for a while. Literally, yeah.
Yeah,
well, not literally.
In the closet. Well, I mean, they say that about gay people, but in the closet about your political views.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which, not to take away from the lived experience of same-sex attracted people.
Hey, you can't call us that because that assumes we don't act on our same-sex desires. I was just talking to a Hillsong boy.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
It also assumes that, like, straight people like me don't sometimes feel attraction towards other people. It's all silly. I really do think that the feelings I was feeling of being in the closet were comparable. Like, I was terrified of the ostracism that I would face if I were to actually tell people what I thought.
Well, I can relate to that. I just joked about they use that for being gay, but yeah, it's also just about being open to other ideas. It felt like, it was black and white. You can't have a conversation about, it's sort of like this one idea at a time kind of realm that I felt like I wanted to explore. I suppose as well with progressivism, it felt in recent years like it's become more extreme, but I feel like we've peaked in a way and people are coming down again. Would you agree or not? I always say that the wokest people I know hate cancel culture, and I'm like, aren't you guys sort of the same thing? But I've learned through having sort of conversations with people that I maybe I'm optimistic that we're becoming less extreme and less polarized. In your experience, what would you say?
I'm not sure. I would say that the average person is more aware of like cancel culture and identity politics and all these ideas. But I think the militancy, if that's a word, of the far left, which you can also see on the far right, has always existed and will always exist. I think these are inherent to human nature. I think people are naturally power hungry. I've got a very Hobbesian view of human nature. I don't think that the state of nature is that we're beautiful, like peaceful creatures who just want to care and love all the time. We have that in us, but we also have the base animal, I will kill you if you don't kill me sort of thing. And I want power sort of thing. So I'm not sure. I don't think we're becoming any less divided, no. And I think that actually with social media, I'm extremely concerned about the future of our societies because I think that young people in particular, younger than us, who have gone through puberty online, they've lived a lot of their life online, they feel more in common with someone who lives on the other side of the world just because they watch the same anime show as they watch or they believe the same thing about veganism or feminism or whatever or gaming or they feel more in common with them than their neighbor. And they barely even talk to their neighbor because they spend a lot of time online doing the social stuff online. And I think that's going to have dire consequences for our civilizations. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Dark.
Really dark. Yeah. It makes me think about AI and like what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Especially with the facial, like people are, what is it called?
Like deep fakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, man, I'm plastering myself all over the internet now, and it's just like,
too late now. Yeah. I mean, I've been posting photos of myself online since I was like 14. So, there we go. It's all out there.
I want to bring it back to, you said these sort of left-wing progressive ideal people look at things in terms of like black and white. The same thing happens with conservatives and right-wing people, but you spend a lot of time criticizing the left.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
I'd say that there's times for criticizing the right and the left, and again, people say it's a silly dichotomy, left and right, and I used to scoff at that in a way, but it's sort of right. I think the recent war in Israel has really made me see how a lot of the time the far right and the far left are actually very similar in many ways. So
some people describe it like a horseshoe almost.
Yeah. So I see, there's that political compass thing the quiz you can do online. There's like authoritarian, liberal, progressive, conservative maybe. But I think that axis of authoritarian, like that authoritarianism you see equally on the left and the right, and I will criticize that. And I think I have been criticizing it a lot on the right. Yeah. So I just think that at least in Australia, the far right that we have, they're scary, but I've seen like far right protests, I don't know, not that many guys, usually young men, because young men are more attracted to these ideas. But I see a lot on the far left. But then again, on the far left, like I've seen a lot of violence at anti-Israel protests. Just after October 7th, there was a protest at the Opera House where people burnt the Australian flag, burnt the Israeli flag. They were saying, at the time we thought they were saying, kill the Jews. They were actually saying fuck the Jews. Beautiful.
Okay.
But some of the men there, mostly men, very angry young men, a lot of them, had Lebanese flags. They were obviously, not all of them, but many of them from Lebanese Aussies. I don't think they're far left. They look very far right to me. They look just like the Proud Boys who were who are neo-Nazis. Very, very similar behavior. And in many ways, like if they're supporting Hamas, like Hamas are fascists. That's far right, So there's a weird horseshoe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, would you say at those protests, most of them are there, most people at those protests, you call them anti-Israel protests, but they're there to sort of ceasefire, stop the genocide. I know it's way more complicated than that.
Mm-hmm.
But would you argue the majority of people are literally there to stop the genocide in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip?
Firstly, there's no genocide.
Okay.
But a lot of the people there would believe there's a genocide, yeah.
It's plastered all over the media as a genocide. Explain to me, it's not a genocide?
Well, a genocide is a planned cleansing of a group of people based on their nationality or ethnicity or religion. So if I was to commit a genocide, imagine I wanted to kill every single Victorian who lives in Victoria. I hate Victorians. Why would I drop leaflets and put pings on their phone and say, hey guys, next week I'm committing a genocide. I just want to give you like fair warning. Like I hate you. I want to kill you all. I don't think you deserve to live. But also I want to protect your lives. So I'm warning you to get out now. It doesn't make sense. It's not a genocide. It's a war. War is disgusting. War is horrible. people die. People get severely maimed. It's disgusting and we should avoid them, but it's a war. Israel has had many wars with its neighbors. It lives in a very hostile region. And so people at these protests, look, a lot of them are innocent in the sense that they're naive. They might not know as much about the history of the region or why this war is happening. I have some sympathy for those people. I think you should be more educated if you're actually going to go to a protest. And for example, if I were to protest what, I don't know, Italy's policy on, I don't know, nuclear energy or something, a better example is Ukraine, Russia. You know, I've got my opinions on Russia being in the wrong, but I'm not I don't care that much or believe that I have such authority that I would go out there and tell, Russia what it is to do, or that I would go to like Russian neighborhoods of Sydney and blame them for the war in Russia, Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm getting nervous now because I don't know much about the subject, and that's why I don't want to talk about it.
That's hey, listen, okay. You don't need to know.
I'm not going to cut any of this out. I would just because I want to have an honest conversation. I suppose. Are you open to the idea that you might not have all the information on this conflict?
100%, and I don't. And before,
you've got the Israeli flag and the Australian flag on your on your shirt, so you're a proponent of Israel.
Yeah, I support Israel. Yeah.
And you can do that without supporting
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Just like I love Australia. I think Australia is a beautiful country. I feel like I'm the luckiest person. Anyone who's born in Australia or who lives here now, you have won the lottery in that. It's objectively one of the best countries in the world to live in. And I'm very proud of that. But are we a perfect country? Is our government perfect? No. We've done terrible things. The thing about liberal democracies like Australia and Israel is that we punish our governments or our government officials when we do wrong, when there's corruption, when there's citizens who commit crimes against, like, look at the ADF. Like, we had Australian soldiers, possibly, I've heard many things, but, the Ben Roberts-Smith incident, if we believe that there's evidence that an Australian soldier has done a terrible thing, even if it's to an enemy, civilian or soldier, we will prosecute them. And that's great. And that's what Israel does too. And Israel has admitted that, it's made mistakes. For example, it admitted that it was a mistake to, I think it attacked an aid truck which it believed was holding terrorists, which regularly happens. Like, what people don't understand about this war, and I would really recommend that everyone goes and watches John Spencer's work, because John Spencer is an expert in urban warfare, and it's simply that this war is urban warfare, and that terrorists have been working over decades to really hone their skills, and they often dress as civilians, and they hide under schools, and they hide under hospitals and stuff, and it's people just think, oh my God, they bombed a hospital. How could you do that? And I get that. It sounds horrible. Like, it sounds fucked up. How could you ever do that? But what you don't understand is that they use that. They use hospitals. They use, why wouldn't you? It's so smart. Like, if I knew that you weren't going to look under a hospital. Why
you mean Hamas is using hospitals as their base and stuff?
And it's not just Hamas. The Taliban's done it. Like, lots of, the Australian government does, smart and sneaky things to win wars too. We all you know.
I want to wrap up. Yeah.
Yes,
I don't want to spend too much time. No. I mean, look, I will say I've spent a lot of time absorbing a lot of information about the conflict, which haven't come to a conclusion. I guess my only conclusion is I probably agree with the ceasefire because all the innocent civilians that are dying, it seems naive to just write it off as war crimes. Like that conflict in particular for me. But you still sort of you believe you can sort of support a state like that?
Well, I wonder, so imagine if your sister, I know you have siblings, if your sister was being held hostage right now by men and they're being held, imagine she was being held in someone's house, in an average person's house in Queensland, and was being held hostage there. She's a young woman.
I would support, the couple of trucks going in, getting the hostages, not planes bombing the shit out of.
Well, they're not just bombing the shit out of. They're not just going, wee. That's a complete misinformation. There's no carpet bombing. They're doing, with the best knowledge that they have. They're trying to go into civilians' houses without killing civilians, which is really hard. Because people don't just open the door and say, oh, the cops are here. Yes, I've been holding someone hostage. It's really difficult. I don't think you nor I could imagine how difficult it is to, get rescue hostages or any of this, like secure borders. It's all really, really difficult stuff. And I feel very sorry for the Israelis who are losing their young people, our age, in the prime of their life. They're going down tunnels to Hamas tunnels to get out people alive. I feel for.
I mean, if it was like a couple of hundred Palestinians, I would say, okay, cool. They're trying to get, not cool. They're trying to get the hostages, people are dying, but it just tens of thousands. It seems a bit much to, write it off.
Well, firstly, yes, the numbers are coming from Hamas, but obviously, there's no denying that people are dying. Yeah. As I said, a lot of these hostages are being held under people's homes. So imagine if that was your sister or brother being held under someone's home. Would you go,
now you're getting my emotions involved?
No, I know it's my sister. I love her, but no, it's better that we just keep her there because I don't want to hurt anyone. Come on, it's not the way things work. And you can't, especially the Jewish people who have been persecuted for pretty much as long as they've existed and have gone through the Holocaust, they will not let their people be slaughtered again. There's an argument, a belief, and many Jews admit it, that they walked like little lambs into the Holocaust. They kept thinking, surely this isn't happening. No, it's fine. Yeah, things are getting a bit weird, huh? They're making us wear yellow stars, but no, it's okay. People underestimate how quickly things can go awry, and but Jews know now, and they're gonna save their own people.
Yeah, I mean, I could spend a lot of time offering counter arguments, which you'll probably have arguments too, and then I could do counter arguments, and we could talk for 2 hours.
Solve the conflict today,
but
unfortunately,
I'm interested in sort of how you've come to hold such a strong position about Israel and Palestine. I'm interested in that, you personally.
So I would say that it's not such a strong position. I would simply say that I've always been very pro-truth, and even if it's ugly, and pro, I guess, freedom. And a lot of my values align with the values of Israelis and Jews, diaspora Jews too. So firstly, there's that Israel's in many ways Western nation who has Judeo-Christian values like we have. So there's a lot of similarity there. But also Israel's just an incredible country. It was Jews have always lived there, but they've created a nation, a very successful nation in the desert with Jews from Yemen, Ethiopia, Poland, and they've all come together, all these different, same culture, same religion, but people from all over the world to create a country that has, an incredible economy that creates, really great technology that's used around the world. And it's a great example of multiculturalism, and they revived the Hebrew language that was almost dead. They've just got, and despite all their issues, despite, having hostile neighbors on pretty much every side, they still love life and they still have this positive attitude. I've met lots of Israelis, they think the diaspora Jews actually are too, they complain too much and they're too worried about all this stuff. Like, Israelis are just very resilient, hardworking, impressive people. They're impressive people, just as are other groups. Who else are really? Who else do I have a lot of respect for? I'm trying to think of other nationalities. Okay, I really like Iranians, Persians. Persians are really good, honest people. Afghans.
Just
I've met
not
a
the
lot
Iranian
of Afghans.
government, right?
Just not the Iranian government. Most Iranians hate their government.
Yeah.
Iranians are really, they have a beautiful culture. Who else? Americans, despite all their issues, I think Americans are, really good people, a lot of them. I know Kiwis. Great, Afghans. I have a lot of issues with Islam, obviously. Well, I haven't talked about that. That's a whole other debate.
Islam,
but,
Palestine.
Despite that, Afghans, I've noticed a difference between, there's such a different, Afghans, Turks. Just to call them all Muslims is stupid. There's so many differences between them all. And yeah, I've volunteered with lots of Afghans and really great people.
You're coming across as open-minded and open to ideas and different ways of life, but some of the things you're saying, I can imagine people would feel, maybe your ex-social justice activist friends would feel disgusted with. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, how have you being open about your views sort of have impacted your life and your relationships with people?
Good question. Well, I've definitely lost a lot of friends. Is it right to call them friends? Probably not. I don't think they were friends. They were people I hung out with and had fun with and maybe had a shared history with. But aside from that, we weren't aligned. Our values weren't aligned and there wasn't much substance to it. So having such, I guess, strong political opinions is a good way to filter through those people, because people just, if they actually care about you, they'll stick around. But if they don't actually care about you, your opinions will get rid of them. So that's happened a lot. And at the time, whenever I lose a friend, it's painful. I want people to like me. I'm like everyone, but I spend hours thinking about what I believe in, and I sleep happily at night knowing what I value. So in the end, if someone doesn't want to be friends with me because of that, I'm like, that's okay. It's probably your loss, but it's okay, like, that's fine.
We're people pleasers by nature, and you've admitted yourself, mm-hmm. you want people to like you. Why is it so important for you to sort of propagate your values and your beliefs and your politics in this way?
Good question. I've thought about it a lot. I actually can't help it. I don't think that it's important.
Predisposition.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily that important to me. It's just like I literally can't stop. I've tried to stop myself, and I just have like a voracious, I don't know, a desire to speak about things that I really care about and a passion for it, and I can't contain it. And social media is just like the best way to get it out there, because I'm like, boom, this is what, you know, this is a new thing I found out, you know, this is an interesting fact, this is happening here, blah, blah. This is what I think about this, you know. It's a curse and a blessing.
Yeah. I feel similar. It's sort of like a thread or a, I don't know, purpose, if you will. Like you feel like you have a purpose, and if you don't speak about it, it's almost like your existence becomes hollow and in a way agonizing.
Yeah.
Because you're not fulfilling your desire.
100%.
Oh man, I wish I was like someone that didn't care about this shit so I could just live peacefully.
I've thought that many times.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, look at what we're doing. Without this aspect of ourselves, we wouldn't be like, we're making a career out of it. Well, we are. Like,
just got monetized.
Great. Good for you. Muzzle tough.
Do that again.
Wait. You know, and it's great that in this day and age we can, you know.
Yeah, like there's not really any gatekeepers. You can just sort of put your own beliefs and values out there, and if people resonate with them, then they'll come to you.
Yeah, it's good and bad.
Yes.
When we do it, it's good. When other people do it, it's bad. When people I don't like do it, it's bad. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I feel like talking about politics, for me, it can be, it's like invigorating. It's so alienating. And maybe that's rich coming from me because I literally have a podcast where I talk about politics, and I've been able to build different relationships. But I suppose I want to unify society in a way. And I worry that this kind of stuff maybe contributes to division, or
like what you're doing.
I don't think I contribute to division, but I feel divided.
Yeah.
You know? I exist in all these different sort of communities, the arts community, the Christian community, the heterodox, podcast, liberal. Yes, hang out with conservatives. The
gay community.
Lefties. Yeah. I just wonder, talking about this stuff, it feels alienating in a way.
But also you get a sense of community from it.
Weirdly so.
It's like, yeah, I know what you mean. And for me too, there's this tension between wanting to work in this industry and caring about all of these issues, but also like, am I contributing to the problem that I care about solving, you know? Like, am I part of the problem? And I've talked to Claire about this, about working in the media, like the media, you know, the media and is part of the problem. And I care about, you know, division on social media, yet I am the one who's posting reels on social media and trying to get them viewed as many times as possible, you know, so.
It's that balance, eh? Because, I mean, you work in the media, it's outrage and disgust, which makes us watch something.
Yep.
How do you resist the temptation to not post to get views? How do you resist that sort of temptation, or do you?
Well, it's about striking a balance between having passion and igniting passion in people. Passion is a nice way of putting it, I suppose, emotion. But also not stooping so low that you're just like creating rage bait. It's a line I have to walk every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they call it, a grifter. Someone who's just posting stuff, clickbait.
Well, yeah. Grifters, like, what's the hot topic issue of today?
And you're going to grift off it for money.
Lots of grifters out there. Yeah.
I suppose, you sort of talked about you're into like liberalism and you're worried about the division of the society. I suppose, how could we, like, what are some good values you'd like to see sort of play out in our society today, and how can your everyday person contribute to elevating them? Well,
I've got my own values, but I think a good thing is that everyone, you know, really think about what they value individually. And that's one of the good things that Jordan Peterson did for me, was to get me to ask myself, what do I value? And I came up with 3 main things, if I can remember them: truth and honesty, integrity, which is similar, and hard work. And I think society-wide, I'd like to see a lot more truth and honesty. It's that word truth is, weaponized by everyone politically, but I really do think there is an objective truth. The far left doesn't seem to agree on that sometimes, but like there is an objective truth. There's an objective truth that humans are dimorphic. There are men and women.
Are there?
And, gender identity is very interesting and we should talk about it, but let's not forget the objective truth that, there are XX chromosomes and XY, and like, let's not talk about it all day. That's boring, but it's the truth. Move on. Let's not debate the truth. It's the fucking truth. Like, who cares?
Yeah, right.
All of that. I don't know, that it depends how far you want to go. Like, I would say it's an obvious truth that, this is more spicy, but that some cultures are better than others. For example, I think, the cultures we have in Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada are objectively great cultures, and that's why so many people from all over the world want to move here. I would say that perhaps the culture in, I don't know, Iran, although it's got many beautiful things, it's simply just not that good. And that's why people want to leave there. And it's not just the government, it's government, religion, culture, it's everything.
What do you think makes our society so great?
Good question, but I'm reading Dominion at the moment by Tom Holland, which is about the birth of Western thought, and he's pretty much convinced me that Christianity, although I'm not a Christian and I spent a lot of my teenage and early adult life absolutely mocking Christianity and Christians, and I was really quite cruel. I would think now that actually a lot of it is thanks to Christianity, which of course came out of Judaism. And, Judeo-Christian values have a lot to do with the success of the West. But
I have to interject there. A lot of harm has been caused in the world due to Christianity too. I say that as a Christian,
Yeah.
So many evil acts have been committed in the name of Christianity. So many wars have been started in the name of Christianity. Like
a while ago, for sure. I don't know about recently.
I wouldn't say today. Apart from like the anti-gay stuff, church trauma, but that's more personal.
Yeah,
like, it's not like a big societal thing. I mean, we've got the freedom to not go to church in our societies, right?
Exactly. So like Christians created secular nations, which is interesting because Christianity went through that Reformation, which other religions haven't, Islam, for example. It was honed and so much so that most Christians, the average Christian respects, they might think that I'm going to hell, but they don't want me to die for it. They don't think I'm an infidel. They're not going to force me to go to the church. They might be annoying and be like, hey, there's something great on this Saturday. Do you want to come along? And I'm like, you want to take me to Hillsong, don't you? They're like, yeah.
Been there, done that. Oh, man. I suppose, another question I wanted to ask you was you spend a lot of time sort of criticizing bad ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important to do that?
God, because bad ideas, is there anything worse than, every terrible thing you can think of started as a bad idea, really? Like deciding to, I don't know, Hitler. Hitler had many bad ideas. Stalin.
Do you think
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Do you feel like it makes you negative, though? I think when I say that, maybe I could be more specific. You criticize the overreach of the feminist movement, social justice movement. I suppose why is it important to do that? Why is it important to criticize the overreach of social justice movements?
Because social justice can easily, and we've seen it throughout history, can easily, just like any movement, turn into a totalitarian, fascistic movement where people can die. But look, like, is that going to happen right now? No, probably not. But still, it's like a tree. You need to constantly prune the tree. You need to pluck the weeds, or else, you know, it's going to get overrun by weeds and go out of control and, you know, maybe eventually die. You know, you need to look after the tree.
All right. Well, let's wrap up this conversation. I'll just sort of end with, what is sort of next for you and Quillette, and what are you doing in the future?
Next for me, well, Quillette's just growing and growing. I'm trying to build up our YouTube a little bit more, because, you know, we publish these incredible essays, but a lot of people don't read essays. They don't want to spend that much time, you know, doing that. So what I'm trying to do is translate those essays into watchable video content and conversations. So that's part of it. And I don't know, just personally, like, have fun, live life. I'm turning 30 next year. It's like
30,
you know,
flirty,
getting
and
old.
thriving. I cannot believe I just said that, but oh well. Thank you so much, Zoe Booth.
Thank you so much.